So I am Scott Dikkers, and I'm going to tell you the story of how I built a company that started as little more than a joke, but has become, let's face it, the most trusted news source in America, The Onion.
Hi, I'm Scott Dikkers, founder of TheOnion.com. Yes, I come from the comedy business, but comedy is serious business. People ask me all the time, how did The Onion become so successful? I call it the Onion way. Living your mission, loving your people, and having fun doing it. Now, The Onion started as a small college humor publication and grew into a multi-million-dollar company and brand recognized all over the world, with tens of millions of diehard fans and social media followers, with a dedicated, happy, and loyal team. I understand the challenges that every organization faces. We dealt with the same things at The Onion: company culture, keeping customers, dealing with new technologies, learning to be innovative. During my talk, I want attendees to feel like they're part of the Onion team. We'll go on a little journey. We'll share some laughs, of course. More importantly, I'll provide helpful tools for success. The Onion Way is not just a keynote, it's a philosophy. We'll focus on motivating attendees to, number one, live their mission and be a more effective leader or team member. Number two, love your people. Now that means your teams and your customers. Nowadays, growth only comes from being in love with a brand, culture, product, or service. And that's what we focused on at The Onion. Finally, number three, I strip away all the buzzwords and get attendees to realize the most important thing of all is to have fun doing it. If we're not enjoying our lives, we're doing something wrong. The Onion Way is how I built The Onion, and I want to share that with attendees. Remember, live your mission, love your people, and have fun doing it. I hope to work with you in the near future. In the meantime, here's some clips.
I believe everybody needs a mission. Everybody needs to find out what they are compelled to do, and they need to do it 100% without reservation or hesitation. This is the foundation of every great business, every great career. I also believe that you have to trust your people and give them as much freedom as possible. This is the secret to unleashing their potential. And that was the culture we created at The Onion. And so you could go into the office anytime, day or night, and you could find writers cranking away on stories, just trying to make them as good as they possibly could. One of those early writers was a guy named Rich. He worked as a school bus driver during the day and came to work at The Onion all night. I don't know when he slept. He was the hardest working guy I've ever encountered. And a lot of times in those early years, it was just me and Rich staying up late, drinking Cokes, eating pizzas, trying to make each other laugh, trying to make each issue of The Onion funnier than the last. It was crazy times, and nobody was making money. We were barely covering expenses. Some of our advertisers paid in cash, which seemed strange at the time, and then years later, apparently one of them had been busted for cocaine laundering. So, I don't know how that happened. Another early writer I want to tell you about is Carol. I discovered Carol through her street art. She would do these crazy stunts in town, and you couldn't help but notice them. One of them was, whenever she would go on vacation, she would steal a roll of toilet paper from the public restroom there, label where she got it from, and then display it in her apartment. And then other people did the same thing. They heard about it, and they'd go somewhere, and they'd send her toilet paper, and so she had, Mount Rushmore, Graceland, or whatever, but then when other people started hearing about it, she had the Louvre, she had the Great Wall of China, she had the White House. And the White House toilet paper was encased in a special glass, box. And she called it the Toilet Paper Museum. And she would give you a tour like a docent if you went to her house. So, with writers like these, once you find your mission, once you know your calling and you've found your lane and you're living your mission, whatever it is, you have to persevere within that lane. Because if you're persevering in some other direction, you're never going to get anywhere, and you might even cause trouble for yourself. But if you're persevering, you're going to expose yourself to opportunity. It's the only way you can expose yourself to opportunity. In my business, I can't tell you how many people I know who are really funny, really brilliant, potential comedians or comedy writers who aren't working. They aren't putting themselves out there. They aren't trying, so they're never getting the opportunity. Some people who are even less talented are out there. They're going to comedy clubs, they're submitting stories, they're exposing themselves to opportunities. So when those opportunities come, And in the comedy business, opportunities come in very strange, unpredictable ways. Your buddy knows about an opening on a TV show, or somebody has a possible radio gig they can give you. You never know where it's going to come. The more you put yourself out there, the more you persevere, the more you're going to find those opportunities. And what I did at The Onion was I seized every opportunity. Because I was living my mission obsessively, and I was doing any and every kind of comedy, I was exposing myself to the most possible opportunities, and I seized them all. And it really helped us. Now, despite some of these setbacks, The Onion's starting to grow a little bit. We're starting to get a little bit of attention. And the crazy thing is, the attention that we're getting is when we get in trouble, when we're outrageous. I want to tell you about this other writer named Ben, who had taken a marketing class. He was a different kind of writer. He came from the business side of the company, but he really wanted to write jokes, so he would come hang out with the comedy writers, and they didn't like this at all. Like, who's this business guy hanging out in our meetings? And he was well-dressed, he was well-spoken, he was clean, he was emotionally stable. He didn't fit in at all. But he had this idea that we should be sending out press releases. We should be doing marketing. We had never spent a penny on marketing. We didn't know. Who would have thought? And so he would start sending out press releases when The Onion would come out with a new issue or whatever, and we got no coverage. Nobody cared about our press releases. And that's when it hit me. We shouldn't be sending out press releases. We should be doing things that are press-worthy. So we just kept being outrageous, and we kept doing crazier and crazier things.
Lest you leave here today thinking that, well, that's The Onion. They're a crazy, wild media company. They can get away with doing this sort of thing. I want to just give you one example, but there are many, of how this works in any company. I'll select the opposite of The Onion, Walgreens. So a very boring company, has nothing to do with any entertainment industry or comedy or anything. So their brand is convenience. They're going to be the most convenient. And so they'll always put a Walgreens on the corner with a big parking lot, so it's easy to get to. They never are in the middle of a crowded street. A few years ago, they started doing deliveries of pharmaceuticals. No one had ever done that before, because they're thinking outside the box. Well, how can we be outrageously convenient? How can we live our brand? And recently, they partnered with some app, so you can get any product from Walgreens without leaving your bed. Like, that's convenient. People are going to talk about that, and you don't even need to send out a press release for that.
When the mid-2000s hit, the bandwidth was such that you could start putting videos online. So we started doing web videos, and that was an opportunity for us to really leverage this outrageous marketing strategy. And we made videos that were crazy. Some of them were too hot for the internet. We literally couldn't post them, or we'd get shut down. But some of them, the ones that got out, were still pretty controversial. We put out a video that was a parody of a morning show. It was called Today Now. And there was a report. The Make-A-Wish Foundation was going bankrupt because a kid had wished for unlimited wishes. And he had him bringing in battleships and F-18 Hornets and all these baseball celebrities, and they had to deliver on the promise. And so his lawyer, or the lawyer for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, was on the show talking about how doing everything they can, but we hired this expensive legal team, and the kid wished him away, so there's really nothing we can do. And I got a really angry phone call from the head of the Make-A-Wish Foundation saying that funders were calling them wondering if they were going bankrupt. They had to put a big message on their front page of their website saying, no, the Make-A-Wish Foundation does not give away unlimited wishes. The Onion is satire and all this other stuff. And what started happening then was more of the same. We leveraged our outrageousness, and we heightened the contrast, and we played it to the hilt. And what started happening was a new kind of anger. It wasn't people getting upset that they were being made fun of necessarily. It was people getting upset because they were confused into thinking that The Onion was real news. So this was happening more and more, and when people who should know better were taking The Onion seriously, that's when we would get a lot of attention. The nation of China. We fooled them a lot. Maybe it's a cultural thing, I don't know. We did a story about how the US Congress was threatening to leave Washington unless the city built them a new Capitol building with a retractable dome and stadium seating and all this stuff. You know, maybe they go somewhere where they're treated better, like Omaha. And the largest circulation newspaper at the time, the Beijing Evening News, reprinted that story verbatim. And we had made this elaborate Adobe Illustrator graphic with showing the retraction and the hot dog stands and everything. They printed that too. We engendered a real loyalty among our staff, and these writers worked so hard. And this is sort of part 2 of my secret to hiring the best people. I started by obsessively doing all this work myself, and this sort of created a center of gravity, like this force that pulled all these other funny people toward us, who wanted to help, who were compelled to help, much like I had been with Tim and Chris. Eventually, I was able to step back and be replaced by these people, all these people who were better and smarter and funnier than I was, which is a great strategy for becoming the dumbest person in your company, but also a great strategy for getting the best people. Leave them alone and let them do what they do. Let them do what they were born to do, what they were compelled to do because of some emotional need. They will succeed beyond your wildest aspirations. A couple of updates on what happened to some of the writers that I talked about. Tom, who lived in his mother's basement, we coaxed him to Madison to work for us, and then we moved to New York and brought him with us, and he left and had a prolific career. He worked on the David Letterman show and the Conan O'Brien show. Carol of the Dug Up Baby Stunt, she went out to Hollywood and got a job on the Kroll show, on the Comedy Central show Review, and on Community. She's a very in-demand comedy writer today. Rich, first writer I ever hired, he went out to Hollywood, tried to make it as a TV writer, but probably went too early. And he came back without much success and got a job cleaning apartments. You know, like I said, hardest working guy I've ever known. Tim and Chris both founded other newspapers. Chris in Albuquerque, New City, and Tim in Seattle with The Stranger. Ben probably did best of all, the press release guy, you know, because he was good with people. He wasn't one of us. He went out to Hollywood and he met Jon Stewart right before Jon Stewart took over The Daily Show. And Jon hired him to be his executive producer and showrunner. And he won a ton of Emmys working on that show. While he was there, he co-created The Colbert Show with Stephen. And he couldn't run both shows, so he hired Rich out of his apartment cleaning job to be the showrunner of The Colbert Report. Yes, yes. My mom, she went back to college and got her PhD and became an English professor. And the wonderful thing was, she did this after The Onion had gotten pretty well known and was making a lot of money. I actually was able to help her through school. She now, thank you.